Good morning and afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Medosch. I'm a trainer for Retrotec, and right now I'm actually in Phoenix, Arizona, at the EVA conference. And I brought a few computers and a couple of gauges and actually a duct tester so that I could actually kind of run the webinar remotely. I am totally here by myself. So Ben Walker from Retrotec is in Washington answering some of your questions, and Cullen Ginge, the founder and CEO, is also out there to help you with any answers you may have for him directly. Since I don't work directly for Retrotec, I want to make sure that it's clear that I want to personally thank Cullen and his team for all the efforts they have done, because nobody really has done that to them. But the gauge, which we're going to go through today, is a phenomenal piece of work. It really is almost a piece of art, I would describe it. And it actually will change how everyone tests, if not immediately within a year or two. Everything that we do that's our normal routine in a house was actually become a different routine because of this type of gauge and how it interacts with not just your fan, but how it's going to interact with all the other devices that we live with. Many of you have seen these slides from previous webinars, but I can guarantee you that they are not exactly the same, and I'm actually live talking about them. So some people, the DM32 Smart Gauge is new to them. Some people will come back to learn more about it, but I do want to do a quick overview about what the gauges are and how intuitive it is. You've got a touch screen. I'll actually go live in a second with the gauge you see here. And, but basically it actually redefines everything we use on a daily basis. And the one thing that is clear is actually we have a calibration every 5 years, and we added free updates through a software package that I'll talk about also. And the reality is that technology changes, and we realize that. They realize that when they develop the gauge, that probably by the time we hit the market, something new would need to be added, and we can actually change that. I went from the home screen to actually show you the screen as it is when you're actually in the test mode. The gauge over here on the live camera is the standard home screen without being tested. So you can see on channel A, also the hold feature. Just below it is channel B. That's also where the results are now, formerly called mode. On the other side is a nice visual display of the range and the devices. All these areas are all touchable, tappable, and changeable. Time average at the top, and also a speed, giving you a percentage and a little green bar telling you how much the fan is being used from 0 to 100%. As you can see, it's a real simple display. I can actually move up and down 5 pascals during the test. My results are now telling me CFM at 100 square feet at 25 pascals. And the device and changing the range selection is also just as easy as tapping on the actual device itself. I see images of what the device is I'm using. I can take a new range, and it automatically goes back. And if you're paying attention, you saw that I didn't actually change anything. It's still the same duct tester with the same mid-range. But if I wanted to actually change for a new device, I would just tap again at the bottom, change device. Again, all this stuff is a touch screen. It's all easy to use, very interactive. So I picked the 1000 blower door fan. It automatically asks me to pick what range I want, what kind of range am I using. I'll pick the B. And it goes back, and it's already ready to go calculating. To change the results, which actually is a new feature, if you were used to the DM2, some of these results came from flow or flow area, and you had to go through the settings and ask your engineer to help you sometimes change some of the settings. I know at Retrotec are laughing at me right now, but now everything is really easy to access. All of the amazing results that Cullen always want to have built into your gauge to make your job easier it's simple to access. Right? We're just going to tap on the channel B, and it brings up a laundry list of actually a lot of the stuff we use instantly on the first screen, from pascals to CFM and flow area. And my favorite, which is why I've always loved the Retrotec product, is air changes per hour. I just still get to conquer that in my head. Here it is. I can actually pick air changes per hour, and I can also go to more options. There's a list of actually EQLA, EFLA, and square feet, square inches, different types of pressures. I press that circle again, I go back to the same where it was. I select one, I use the arrow, I go back, and apply those changes. All right, so I am here live by myself. Of course, I practiced this, and I did not do any videos today. I really wanted to show you how this stuff worked live. So what I'm going to do now is escape out of the PowerPoint, come back to that. You can see my screen, all right? Over here on the side, I actually have a virtual gauge, which I'm going to talk about more, but right now I actually can use it to display the gauge as I talk. This is an application that you can download for free from Retrotec site. You do not even have to own a gauge in order to actually download this and use it. Right? I have a little segment at the end on training and trainers, and this is one of the best things I've ever seen to help anybody learn a gauge or for trainers to get them help for the gauge. I have a gauge, I have two gauges that are plugged in Wi-Fi, and they both show up. So I have a one that's a serial number of 300352 and the 4004. This is the yellow gauge you see right in front of you. It's right here. So I'm going to select it, and I hit connect. And for anybody who's done technology in front of a group, this was a scary effort because it's like dropping a phone call. You never know when something worked all the time and suddenly it did not. So hopefully now, for those of you that actually have the video on the top and the image below, you can actually take that bar that's in between and decide how big to make it or how small to make it. All right, so right now I can actually touch the screen, and you can see that the gauge actually adjusts automatically. I can pick another range, right, or I can actually go back and change device. These are all of the Minneapolis or Energy Conservatory devices, so I could actually pick the duct master or a different fan or the exhaust or true flow, or I can toggle through and come back to the Retrotec fans. I actually brought a duct tester with me, and I'll set it for the mid-range. I know that this screen is fuzzy. It is really hard to get a video to want to work with the electronic screen, but I try to make sure I have no glare or limited glare. So I know it is kind of fuzzy, but that's why the screen on the bottom showing you the actual gauge is what I really want to focus on. So that was as simple as it takes in order to change a device, change a range. Right? I can actually select B. I kind of showed you this on the slides, but now you can kind of see it in action. I can pick air changes per hour. I go back. All right. One of the things I want to point out is that the screen is not the same kind of screen you have on your iPhone or the devices you're used to working with. It's not a capacitive or sensitive to temperatures or moisture. It's actually a resistive or pressure type of thing. So you just need to place some firm pressure. So air changes per hour based on volume. And I can also change the volume. So let's say this is a much larger house than 8,000 cubic feet. Let's say it's 18,000 cubic feet. Set. So now I'm going to give an air change per hour based upon the volume. I can go through the settings. You kind of saw some of those, but I can also just do set pressure. Any pressure, 25, 50, anywhere in between, 75, and it would run as soon as I hit set. I don't have anything connected to the fan connected right now, but I will in a minute. So my goal is actually you can see that I can actually control the gauge, and indirectly I actually showed you that the software package is actually showing me everything that I did. I can also go to the software package. I'm over here now actually on my screen with my mouse, and I'm going to change the device. I'm going to go back to, I have a blower door coming up next, so I'll do a blower door, and I'm going to do the C8 range, and my gauge also changed also. It may be hard to see due to the contrast, but I can guarantee you that it did change. So, and I can also go to set pressure. I can actually control the gauge directly right here, 25 pascals, set, and actually the gauge is now will be operating and running. I don't know. Is anybody else hearing a bad echo? Somebody else can't ask them about a bad echo.
It's a bit of an echo.
Maybe I can get closer to the computer. So again, my goal is to actually show you that I can use the virtual gauge to control the device directly, and I can actually, as many gauges I may have, I can actually control those also. One of the amazing features which I love about this program is that I can actually double-click virtual gauge again, and I got another one. And I'm going to ask it to find gauges. And the 004 is actually being used by this device, but I can actually now connect this one and I want to clear the screen, I can get rid of ones I'm using. And so now, right here from my screen, I'm able to control 2 different fans, 2 different devices right here. I describe it as being able to go to the kitchen. I can actually, the HVAC system just stopped. I can actually go to the kitchen, set up a duct tester, blower door. I can even do leakage outside, controlling both fans and the gauges right from the kitchen. Right now I'm connected to a USB, but I also am able to set up a Wi-Fi connection to show how it also works. Are there any questions we want to address while we're tackling some of these right now? Baseline, great question. So I'll go ahead and do it on the, I'll stop here. And if I am using a blower door in settings, at the top I have baseline. It's telling me there's none taken. So for baseline, I can either do capture baseline or clear. There's nothing there, so I'll hit capture. At the bottom here is telling me the duration that I'm actually doing that. And you can see by above what kind of issues I might be having. I can kind of maybe play the ports a little bit to cause something to happen. And depending on the conditions, obviously, or what kind of responses you're getting from the gauge, then it would actually determine what your was. I have in capture. I go 1.3 as my baseline. I just go back, call anything you need to mute your, somebody needs to mute their mic out there. And I can actually see where my baseline is. And on the home screen, it shows right here, up on channel A, because I play with the ports with my finger, it's giving me that number. Pascals with 1.3 baseline subtracted. Or actually adding because it was a negative. So that's baseline. And I'll go through the settings here so you kind of can see them. We went through them, they were kind of quick, but I can adjust the area or volume. We talked about the using air changes per hour, or actually I can do CFM per 100 square feet, or CFM per 1,000 square feet, or a variety of options there. I can adjust the time average from 1 second, 5 second, 10, 30, or what's really pretty unique for a lot of people that want to do hardcore testings, I can do a manual. I can actually determine how often I want it to actually go through. So I can actually tell it, I want to do a 45-second average, and I can actually enter that. And now I actually have a 45-second average. The other defaults are the network, which I'll talk about in a second, and the default pressure, that's for the add pressure feature. And power down is whether I want it to go off or the sound. Basic elements here, and also something the version, or I can recalibrate the touchscreen. We have come up with a new version. Actually, we'll resize so you actually can put multiple gauges on your screen. But right now, it's actually a fixed size. It's actually related to the exact pixels that are actually on your gauge. All right, I want to close this for just a second, and I will come back to the Wi-Fi. Believe me, there's some nervous tension about making sure that all works together, but I feel confident that it will. A couple more quick features before I actually go more into a lot more live stuff, and that is that this gauge is a lot of stuff that Retrotec has had many of their gauges prior to this time frame, which is tested any pressure in the memory and a variety of stuff, simple quick setups. Anything you're used to with the DM2, which has a lot of great features, phenomenal gauge, is now exactly the same, but just easier to access. For those of you that may have a DG700, a lot of those features really weren't available, but now you can try to use them with Wi-Fi and their, Apple application. All those things actually are inherited in the DM2, the older gauge, or the DM32 has already had those built in for a long time. You don't need an additional device to actually do a lot of the stuff like air changes per hour or set any pressure. I mentioned earlier that chances are things will change with technology, and it was built in from the beginning that you'd be able to plug in your gauge into your computer with a USB or even Ethernet and actually update the firmware that's on there. So we want to make sure everybody who buys the gauge keeps contact with us and register. You can also actually contact us. But you can actually take your gauge, plug it in, and it'll find it through USB and update the firmware automatically. It's very intuitive. I've done it a few times on the updates we've had for beta testing. I do want to address the connection issues that are out there for a lot of people, and I will tell you the truth about what Wi-Fi is and what it does. And every manufacturer's got their own stated testing or what they've done and what they've done in their factory. I actually use it in my house. So the wire connections are Ethernet, and I put down here it's unlimited, it's unlimited gauges. It's really just limited by your software or the amount of gauges you might own. So you can actually do 25, or you can set you up with more gauges if you need to do high-rise structures. We have 100 meters here, or 325 feet, but for Ethernet, there's boosters that actually get you as far as you really need it for that. USB, I put down it's limited because it's limited by USB in general. You can probably go out there somewhere and buy a 100-foot cord that's USB and it's powered or sub-powered. How many hubs can you get? But the reality is Ethernet is a much more long-range, hardwired application than just a USB. So Wi-Fi, I thought I fixed that. I didn't do it. Anyway, I fixed how that shows up there. I didn't take it. So anyway, you can create a direct connection with the gauge. Here, the gauge is right here. So I can go to Settings, all right? And at the top here, it actually tells me Wi-Fi. And I can toggle through Create, or Disable, or Wired, or Join. And then I go to the back button, and it will actually create its own signal and show what the actual IP address is and show that it's connected. The other things you can, it's kind of semantics is how you might describe what a create connection is. So it's actually creating a AP or access point or hotspot. But the reality is you don't need any router or any other device to actually connect your gauge to whatever device you might have. So it could be your own, it could be your PC, it could be your Windows or Android or Apple device, whether it's a phone or a tablet. All right, so I'm sorry about the formatting. It also will join an existing network. So if I actually have a router, or your phone has a hotspot ability to create that, or your tablet, or is there anybody that has the hotspot that they do sharing, or they want to allow other people in the room to use that, this gauge will connect to that also. I've actually done a test. I did one with Corbett, and I've actually been able to share my screen, and I did a lot of that all with my phone as the hotspot, as the internet connection. So I was at a house with no actual internet there. I could use my phone to generate hotspot, internet, and actually allow the gauges to connect through that. So I touched on the virtual gauge software. We'll come back and see that. That's how I'll use the display. And the other thing we also have, Retrotec has, it's called a data logger. And it basically is a software. When you open it up, it will actually say, start recording, and it will start logging. I could tell it every half second, every second, every 5 seconds, and it will log all of the things I get on actually channel A and channel B, all right, as long as it wants until I tell it to stop. When it stops, it exports in an Excel spreadsheet. On Tuesday, our next webinar, we're actually going to do more things about trainers or kind of advanced features, so if you want to come back and catch that, I will actually show you in detail what the data logger does. And if you are actually a proctor or a provider, the data logger is incredibly valuable. You can actually determine every thing that the gauge captured. And it actually just doesn't just capture pressures on both sides, but it actually captures whatever I have the settings to. So if somebody comes back and says, oh, the house passed, and you look at their log, you can actually determine that you are nowhere near what that device actually did. All right, so I got Gauge Remote. This is actually the application for either Apple or Android or Windows smart devices, whether it's a phone or your tablets. You can download those at Google Play or the Apple Store. I can tell you that it is Gauge Remote without a space. There's no space there. If you're looking for it on the Android market, if you have space, strangely, we may not find it. And I'm also going to demonstrate how those look and will work right here also. And that's our cue. Okay, so I'm going to show the gauge that I have right here in front of me on the webcam. All right. Are there any questions so far we should address before we go any further? I don't see any that are coming up.
No, there's just the one about baseline really so far. So.
Okay, great. Okay, so here's something that I don't think even the Retrotec people are aware of, but here's what we're going to do. Is you're able to see my fingers move on the gauge. It is actually connected directly with the USB through to the virtual gauge. All right? And what I'm going to do now is actually set my computer up to make sure it's on the wireless network. It's actually on, I'm going to connect it to the gauge directly. So what I did is I just took my computer and said, find a network, and actually what I've done is have this one set up. So here's how I set that up. It's on the gauge. Actually, I go to Settings. The second screen is Network, and it's on Create. And it gives me a bunch of numbers here, 19680. Of course, I'm going to do it. Oh, I go back. The challenge is that sometimes it doesn't want to do it because of this being used by another device, which is the USB. Of course, it worked earlier. This may be our challenge that I can't do. So, all right, let's go this route. So I'm going to close this up. All right, there's always something that happens. And I am going to be down here on this. I'm going to connect to that gauge. Okay. Of course, it's on. There's always something, a reason how I'm wrong. All right, let's go to. All right, I'm going to join the router. So you got to connect to the router. There may be a Wi-Fi issue in the room right now. So one of the things that I'm going to, so it is there. One of the things I actually will explain to you about Wi-Fi is that it is not the end-all, be-all for what everybody thinks may be the greatest solution to your testing needs. It is a phenomenal way to actually step away from the fan, go to the next couple of rooms, but you will not be able to set your gauge up in a basement and go 3 floors up into an attic and actually hope that the Wi-Fi only from the device will work. It will work great with a router or something that has a powered output, but any devices that any manufacturer has right now, even your phone or anything you have, it's just not capable of producing that far of a range on its own Wi-Fi signal. So I've actually been able to go from, I live in a 2-story house, so I can go upstairs, go down the hall probably about 20-some feet, and I start to lose the signal. So it'll do a lot of what everything you need is basic modes, but if you really want to go like 100 feet or 200 feet or more, a router will do it. I can actually go to my attic and go to the other side of the house and put the gauge in the far side, and that's a good 300 feet through 2 floors and a couple of attics and everything. It works great. Somebody asked about, is there a difference between the red DM32 and the yellow? And the reality is the red one was just the first case that Retrotec came out with. It was kind of off-the-shelf case, and it worked in order to get some beta testing done. And then they actually had their own mold design, so it's a much more sleeker version of the same exact technologies on the inside. So real quick, I'll show you what that looks like. I have a thing that holds it. So this is the gauge itself. Here's my hand. All right, it's incredibly small. I can use one hand to control the device. It's a lot narrower than the red one. On the back, it's got this fantastic clip, and actually here and here have magnets. I'm looking around so there's any metal here that does that. But no, but I can actually adhere to anything. It's not just regular magnets. These are like the super magnets that you have to peel off to get it to work. So I actually clip this onto my belt and walk around. People would have an iPhone on my hip. So it's just about the same size. In fact, here you go. Here's a iPhone and the gauge. So I'm going to go through settings. I try to do a direct connect. For some reason, there's an issue with the Wi-Fi. There's always something when you do it live. So I'm going to go through and actually connect to a join. So it's saying that I actually have a router in here with me that I brought. And I'm going to join. So right now I have join. Let's show you what this looks like. 1 second. So here's how simple it is for me to just bring up a display. So if you're teaching somebody or if you want to share your results, a lot of people like to show homeowners, or if you're a trainer, this is a great tool. these are similar kind of tools we may have had in the past with other devices, but this one's just much more intuitive and exactly what you actually see. So I've got it set up for join right here, which is join up top, right? And I'm going to press the Wi-Fi signal at the bottom here. It's asking me to enter a name. This is a non-secure, unsecure network. So I've got it called RT. That's the router here. I go back, and then once it join, I go back, and it actually shows me what the router IP address is and that it's connected. You actually can see that right here also. So if I go back on either screen, right, now I'm actually able to connect via here. What I did was I brought down a drop-down that showed me USB, network, or both. I wanted to just do network and just have it find the gauge. It keeps wanting to. Settings, check, join, great. Oh. I'm going to close it off one second. Well, I unplugged the USB so that there would be no conflict as to which gauge I was trying to find, whether it's the USB version or actually the Wi-Fi version. Here it is. So I got the same number you just saw, 40004, and actually got the 1010. So this is actually connected to the router that I have in the room, all right? And so it did work, so I can say connect. And I have the same results here that I have actually on the screen. So Wi-Fi is a phenomenal feature that allows you to do a lot of stuff. So let's go to the next stage, which actually would be to, instead of controlling a PC in the house, I actually want to use something else. Like I also brought with me today is I have an Android tablet. And one thing I will make as a general statement for anybody that's doing Wi-Fi, whether you're Energy Conservatory or whether you're Retrotec or anybody, that before you use Wi-Fi, make sure you understand all of your devices and how they work, because usually it's not actually the device, it's usually sometimes the user issue, as you may find with your own computer. So for here, I want to make sure I'm going to connect to either the router or I can connect to this directly. So let's go back to the direct connect. I know that is a common way that people want to use that. So I'm toggling through the screen. And I'm going to go from join to create. Oops. Create, go back. And it has that now. So what I can do now on my device, I can actually go and find that signal. All right. So it's showing me right here that I have that signal. Connect. I'm going to go back to my home screen. And this is the application which you can download from the Play Store or from the App Store. And I'm going to go back to the home screen, and it's found my gauge. I connect to the gauge, and now I'm actually using this total Wi-Fi created from the device over to my, could be an iPad, or this is actually a Nexus 7, could be my phone, could be an iPhone. So now I can actually control this. One of the things that happens is actually I'm actually controlling the gauge literally from my mobile device, and the actual gauge just waits for the response. So if I wanted to change to the results to CFM, I go back, and you can see the results are changed. Set pressure, 25, set. Somebody asked if the fantastic software can be installed on an Android tablet. It actually is. That's our goal, and that's our. We're hoping to develop that. I think 2014 is that era of no more PC for a lot of things they're used to doing. I know that the ResNet and a lot of other software that's out there is all on tablet, and that's our Retrotec goal also. Somebody said the live cam is freezing up, but mine's here. I got another computer that's showing what we have, so I apologize for that. Okay, so I can also show you on an iPhone. I'm going to turn this one off. All right, back, home. I want to actually connect to a different Wi-Fi, so this one's not on it. The gauge will only want to connect to one thing at one time, so I'm going to just connect this to something else. Great. And for those of you who have iPhones, actually the market share actually is drifting towards Troy, but I borrowed this from Corbett Hunsford, that's his wife there. So I wanted to show people that actually it does work on both formats, so I can actually go to settings, Wi-Fi. It's actually on that right now. I said OK. I go back. I'm not a virtual gauge. It's already found the gauge, searching for other devices, connect, same thing. So these are kind of things that actually are going to change how I think we're going to do testing. Because right now it's only controlling the gauge. Retrotec's goal and what we're trying to develop right now, and I'm working with them, is that let's take this to the next level. So this controls the gauge, but I have all this great data. This iPhone has, and the Android have data where I'm standing, and temperature that's local, or even temperature itself. There's all the stuff that's around me. There's small CO sensors that can actually be connected to your phone or your tablet. So these are things that are going to change the market, and you can hit run test, save results, and send. I know a few more slides I want to go through. Any questions so far about the software, what it does, or how it works, or questions about how people see using it? Some of the things that I see is that for people to do air sealing or duct sealing, you can set the system up and actually turn the fan on and off from the attic or from the crawl space. You can also do CAS testing. If you can leave your gauge down in the CAS area, walk around with my cell phone or my tablet, and actually see the results change whether I turn on fans or open closed doors. These are only the beginnings of what I think people are going to be able to realize what they can do with the software that's attached to the devices. This is a game changer. There's no doubt about it. Whether you have a Retrotec fan, that's an old fan, as long as it actually has an Ethernet port, the DM32 will control it. And somebody else says the virtual gauge for your PC free. It is free, and so is the data logger, and it also comes with the configurator, which actually updates your gauge also. So all that stuff is a package, and I actually will show you how to go to the website here in a minute and download that stuff. But one of the goals that Colin had was that you have a fan, and your fan will probably last as long as your Ford pickup or Chevy pickup. But your gauge is something that's a great investment to update, and you can add a new brain for what you're used to using, kind of like a new transmission or a new gearbox. So the DM32 will control all of the energy conservatory fans and devices, whether it's the True Flow or the blower door or the duct blaster. So we actually, if you buy the upgrade to the gauge, and you want to trade in your DG700, then you actually get the control, which you kind of see right there in the middle, just below the gauge. We did mention that we were going to talk about some partnership stuff, so hopefully some of the things I showed you, could, as a trainer, you might be able to understand what those are. But they actually are showing you the simulated mode, which I'm going to show you in a second, on actually how to use the remote gauge. And you can actually go online and download this, anybody, like I said earlier, and it works again by itself. So if you're a trainer, you can have your class download it, give them assignments, because it's you know what the answers are, you know what actually the results are going to be. If they set up a blower door with certain range configuration, You can do air changes per hour. All those things actually have definitive answers that they can actually go through as an exercise. And the other thing I showed you kind of earlier is I can have more than one gauge actually on one screen. I can actually see that. The whole class can see what a class is doing simultaneously. And you can also actually interact your control groups. Some of you may have seen that I can actually control my screen or share my screen kind of just as you are right now. You see my screen, and if I can actually give you control over my screen, you can actually interact with the gauge itself. And the one thing that is actually a feature if you are a provider or somebody who's training somebody, that you could be on the beach, as long as you have an internet connection, they can call you and you could actually share their screen. There's a variety of stuff that does it. Google Hangout is easy, it's cheap, it's free, and you can actually see what kind of problems they're having and see their gauge live no matter where you're at. So these are kind of things that may be great as a feature now until you're on the beach and some guy calls you and says, I can't get my fan to work, and, but the good news is you can help them out. So of course we also offer, Retrotec offers mobile devices for Android and Apple and Windows. So no matter what your students are showing up in class with, we can actually solve or actually have a product that they can use instantly, or actually come in already knowing how to use some of that. Some trainers are hesitant to actually have these kind of solutions, but I'm a trainer and also remember being a student that the Retrotec gauge always has helped you with the solution or the conclusion, whether it's air changes per hour at 50 pascals or CFM at 100 square feet. We always teach them on how to calculate these results. But I can tell you as a student, it's a lot easier to know that I can actually confirm what I did on paper with what the gauge actually is reading. So again, it's not to bypass what you need to be learning in the classroom, but it is actually a good confidence booster or builder that they can actually confirm that, wow, the gauge is telling me the air changes per hour, I did it on pen and paper, and it's a nice confirmation. One of the greatest confirmations as anybody can imagine is knowing your device was set up correctly. You have the right device, so there's nice visual illustrations that show which device, which range you're using, and to kind of eliminate some of the accidents that happen. And of course, many trainers have only have Minneapolis fans, and you can train with that. In fact, there's several trainers which we're going to explain on Tuesday have actually gone ahead and replaced many of their DG700s with the DM32 because they actually have both systems, and now they can actually train with one gauge on whatever fan their students have or they have in the classroom. And again, that webinar that we're going to do is next Tuesday. Anybody's welcome to join the webinar if you want to learn more about the gauge, but it really be directed towards trainers and what are some of the features that they have. One of the things I did want to show you is actually how the gauge does its simulated mode real quick. So I have it here, and I'm going to just go ahead and it's easy for me to just close it somehow and open it back up. So I can either do a define gauge, or down here it's actually got Start Gauge Simulator. And what it's doing is it's actually help identifying. It gives you a set pressure. Basically, it's 3 times on channel B. So I can change, I can do everything actually a real gauge would do. I can actually go in and change devices. I can run a duct blaster and put it on ring 2. And I can do set pressure, 25, set. And there you go. So I'm achieving my 25 pascals, and I'm actually getting a simulated results. Pretty tight system, but in general, you can actually practice what those are. Let's say if I change it to ring 1, what the results would be. I can go from pascals to CFM. I can change it to CFM per 100 square feet, toggle through 100 square feet. So an assignment would be to download the application, set it up for a Minneapolis with ring 1, and tell me what your CFM at 100 square feet is. So for anybody who wants to practice the gauge again, or if you're a trainer, this is a dream come true when I saw what I could do for a couple other people learn the gauge. Okay, so I hope to see you again next Tuesday. So Retrotec also redesigned their gauge. We've upgraded some of the fans in the last year or so, and they have a phenomenal website. This is actually really something that is exciting. I know that they went through some pains and learning curves to get through it, but it is actually, and it's still growing as all great websites do, but it is actually a phenomenal source of materials and really has helped you to navigate through, and has a lot of great imagery to do that. So if you want to download the virtual gauge, all right, you go to retrotec.com. Right there in the middle is virtual gauge for PC, and you select on that, and you'll go to another page. You do learn more, and on that, you're actually going to move over to the software and training, and you can download. You can download the virtual gauge by itself with the drivers, or you can download the entire package, which includes the data logger or the configurator. So if you have a brand new gauge and you want to make sure you get the entire suite, if you want to just practice with the gauge, you can download that also.
Hey Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
We've got a good question here that Michael answered. He says, what about graduated tests for blower door at varying pascals? Now I assume he's talking about testing at 15 and then stepping it up in 5 Pascal increments. It's a great little feature to show. You start with set pressure and then just keep hitting the up arrow.
Oh, yeah, sure. So right now it's actually running. You can see the gauge. So 1 second. Let's make sure it's clear for everybody to see what we're doing.
We work really well on the virtual gauge too. Yeah, there you go.
And that's a message, find USB. All right, so there's the gauge right there. I'll connect it with USB. I'm going to click on it. All right, and so what Colin's pointed out is that I can actually do a set pressure. Let's just say I'm going to swap it out to a duct tester. Let's say it's a tight house, so I actually have some options. So I have my duct tester. I can do set pressure. Let's just say I'm going to start with 15, and I hit set. And I'm waiting for the average. Oh, I guess 1 second. Let's see this one. Pardon my hands.
So Joe, are you actually setting us up and do a real test?
That's right. I can actually do. Actually, I bought my fan, so I usually don't run it because it can be a distraction with noise. So. But I do have it here, so 1 second. Okay, so we are plugged in. I'll zoom back out a little bit so you can see it. I got the connections on. All right. So I can now go back again to, I'll do it at blower door, so we actually go from 15 up to 60 if you want. Okay, so I can either control on the gauge, set pressure. We'll just table 15, set. What I have down below is actually the stop feature, or I can increase or decrease the pascals just by actually pressing the button. So I'm going to change to CFM per 100 square feet. Or actually, let's just show this straight CFM. The challenge is that my device that I have here needs more room. So the bottom here is telling me that I'm seeking at the bottom here, seeking 15 pascals.
And Joe, if you were to hit the at, you'll notice that when you jog up, the at goes with it.
Right, so if I jog up and then I'm now seeking 20. And I can do 25, you can see on the screen. I can jog all the way through. The reality is that it would be incredibly loud for all of us to tolerate going through trying to find those pressures. But you can see that it actually is a simple way to actually achieve a pressure and clock what I have and go to the next one. it is my personal goal to work with Retrotec to come up with an application on your devices to do that automatically. Do a resident 5-point test or whatever kind of tests are coming around the corner to kind of do that. So that's the goal, is to take stuff that actually is just standard control to actually automating that, whether you actually need a baseline between each reading or not, are all things you'll be able to control. Did that answer the question, Colin?
No, I wanted you to show them when you get set pressure 15, and then when you jog up, it goes at 15 and at 20 and at 30.
Oh yeah, it was there, but you couldn't see it. 1 second.
You couldn't see it?
Yeah, well, you can see it. It's there, but I can't achieve those pressures with my device. So
you can just do it on the virtual. You can just do it on the virtual gauge.
Oh, I'm going to change the average to 5 seconds.
So now if you tap on the at, you'll be able to get the...
Now, if I tap on this one here, all right, same as I tapped here, now I'm have seeking 15, all right, and if I turn the app feature on, I went from 15 to CFM at 15. I can go down just to show you what that looks like. So it's CFM at 10 now. I jog back up, so it's now going to seek 15 pascals, and I'm actually also reading at CFM 15. This feature can actually
click up to 20 and 25.
Yeah, so if I go to 20, once you feel the gauge is stable, this actually works though I can't reach 50. I can't reach any pascal, and I can actually dial in where I need it to be.
So basically, you can almost take readings as fast as you can click that button and write them down, which is kind of cool. Once it gets going.
Say it again, Colin.
You can almost write the CFM readings as down as fast as you can, and you just keep clicking the +5. And let's say you start at 15, you're at 15, and you write it down. You go +5, and then it's going up to 20. And by the time you write it down, it's kind of close to 20. But because it's extrapolating to 20, you can literally write them down as fast as you can, and just keep clicking that button. Go bang bang. So it's kind of like the difference between an automatic rifle and a single shot, Just like automatic, just keep pulling the trigger and keep pressing the +5, +5, +5, and you can go 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 30, all the way up. Write those numbers down, you basically have a multi-point test.
Colin explained that that's all extrapolated in Gauge software, that it's actually giving you the readings whether you reach that or not. That's a great question. Any other questions while we're here with this?
Joe, am I still online here?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to make one point about the accuracy figure. Because you stated earlier that it was more accurate than the accuracy of these gauges is so great that accuracy is not really much of an issue. It's more of an issue in how they hook it up and the fan and a whole bunch of other things. Now, the difference in the flow sensors that we're using because they're digital is we're only starting with digital. It's kind of like analog goes back 100 years, like the old tube manometers and so on, and then digital gauges came out with analog sensors, and they're about have been used in our field for about 20 years or so. Well, they've kind of gone to the point where we can't get them any better. Well, now we're starting with digital sensors, and right out of the box, we're about as good as we were with our old analog sensors. But we've got another 5, 10, 15 years to improve, and a lot of the improvement actually comes in the software that interacts with the sensors. So we can continue to make improvements, and every time you run your gauge and you plug it into the internet, you get those updates automatically, so your gauge keeps improving with time. So I guess the real answer is we have the ability to make the gauge better and better all the time based on circumstances, whereas with the analog we've run out of tricks to make it any better. But I would say right now it's about even Steven with analog, and our digital are pretty much the same.
And only room for improvement. One of the questions I got on a previous webinar was that sometimes the gauge will fluctuate from 0.1, 0.4 back to 0, and I learned one thing from the industry and another, and that is that the sensors are incredibly more sensitive, but the reality is, this may be eye-opener to you, is that it constantly is fluctuating in the gauge, and the software is actually trying to compensate that, so that I'm not too concerned about 0.1 or 0.2 sometimes, but a good analogy is that if you were in your car and you were trying to see how accurate your car was at 1 mile an hour using your speedometer, it doesn't really work well, and you're really not too concerned about that. You do want to make sure it's accurate at 20, 25, 30, which it's dead on. So if you see your gauge fluctuating sometimes from 0.1, 0.3, it's really just something that actually has to do with either some wind conditions that are actually around your hand or your gauge itself, or just see if your software needs to be updated. So every manufacturer handles what is zero and what's absolute zero. I got a couple more slides real quick. All right, so I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Actually, I'm going to do that from my house in Atlanta, and I actually will do a live Wi-Fi walking around my house, and I will show you where the Wi-Fi drops down. So we have nothing to hide, and we think it's phenomenal range, and I'll show you the difference. Someone asks us, what's in the Gauge remote program? The Gauge remote is for, again, for your Apple or your Android devices, and it really just allows me to do remote control, kind of like a remote for your TV. I just can actually see identical setup. That's what I want to have with the iPhone or with the Android. It really just allows me to see my display, walk away from the fan, and control it from further away. We did the website. So I encourage you to go take a test drive, and actually you can play with the gauge and see how it works. It won't do anything, but you actually can practice and see how intuitive it is and what are the features. So there are two options. They now look identical. They're both yellow cases. So you can get a DM32 that has no Wi-Fi. It's just a standard gauge. Or you can get the DM32 Wi-Fi. They're both available now. The difference is, in general, they're probably going to spend about $300 more for a Wi-Fi unit. But if you don't take advantage of this, then you have one of these other gauges, then you will regret it next month or you'll regret it next year. I tell the story that when I first bought my system, I didn't use it for 2 months, and my wife reminded me that I did not use it for 2 months. When are you going to use that? When are you going to use that? But this actually you can justify will save you money if you bought it now, because October 1st, that goes to $950. So right now you can trade in your DM2 or your DT700. If you trade in the DT700, you get the adapter that does the speed control, so you can control those fans. And if you're a trainer and you have both and you want to upgrade, we'll definitely make sure you get the speed control adapter so you can actually work with any system you've got. But this actually is an amazing price and amazing deal. And of course, it's also shipping with all of the new systems that are out there. And on behalf of Retrotec and myself, we want to thank you for your time today. This is going to be an exciting time happening in the industry and all the changes that are happening. And Wi-Fi is just the beginning of it.